Heartbeat Alaska is brought to you in part by Coca-Cola.
The generous support of the Alaska Native Health Board.
And by Chugachmute.
Welcome to Heartbeat Alaska. I'm Jeannie Greene, bringing you Native news across the north. Today we travel to South Central Alaska, to Chenega Bay, where the students there held a fundraiser for the American Heart Association. Then we travel further north to Akiachak in southwestern Alaska, where Rhonda McBride of KYUK-TV based in Bethel brings us a story on the 3rd annual Yupik Education Conference. The Alaska Native Health Board interview is with us once again. The topic this week, fetal alcohol syndrome. And in keeping with good mental health, Dr. Dennis Greene, we welcome you back with your Take a Minute for Mental Health advice. Also this week, the Shavings family will be with us throughout the program with their very special music. We also have another segment from Savagery and the American Indian, the award-winning documentary from BBC. All that and much, much more. But first, here's Gary Fife with National Native News.
This is National Native News. I'm Gary Fife. Questions about the earliest inhabitants of the continent have usually been answered with the Bering Land Bridge theory that says ancestors of most Native Americans came here about 12,000 years ago. Now archaeologists with the Bureau of Land Management in Anchorage, Alaska, have reported what's being called the oldest and most significant archaeological discovery to challenge that theory. A native culture was already here. In a press conference in Anchorage, the BLM, the Bureau of Land Management, gave details.
Previously, archaeologists assumed that the earliest immigrants to North America came from Siberia, eastern Siberia specifically, that portion that's adjacent to Alaska, separated by 56 miles of the Bering Sea. It's always been thought that cultural groups are geographically specific, so that in that portion of eastern Siberia there would be only one cultural group that lived there. This does not seem to be the case based on what we found at the Mesa site, because the elements of the cultural group that we find there are completely different than those that we found in Siberia, or I should say those that are known to come from Siberia. We also, by the same token, have sites in Alaska that display the same cultural traits that the Siberian cultures have. So what this demonstrates is that we have two totally different cultural groups coming into North America about the same time. What's further interesting is the fact that the group of people that inhabited the Mesa site, there are no antecedents for them that can be found in Siberia. Basically, the site is a lookout site. It's a hunting lookout. It's elevated above the valley by about 60 meters. It provides an unobstructed 360-degree view of approximately 50 square miles. So the people that were using the site were climbing up on top of this to survey the surrounding area for game animals. What we find on the site itself basically are the remains of hearths from which we get charcoal, which enables us to date the site. And we also find the remnants of hunting weapons, the weapons that they use to kill these game animals. And since we don't find a lot of the artifacts or tools that would be associated with daily living, only hunting type tools, we're pretty much sure that that's basically what the purpose of the site was. It was a hunting lookout.
The culture was found atop a flat-top ridge 225 miles south of Barrow. BLM archaeologists say the artifacts show that the ancient people who made them were related to the ancient tribes who settled in the southwest of the United States. The connections to the southwestern tribal ancestors were made because of similar spear points. Several points were found atop the mesa that overlooked hundreds of square miles of terrain, an ideal site for hunters. The find has raised new questions about the origins of these people, and Interior Secretary Bruce Babbitt has already signed papers to begin protections for the area. Efforts continue to form an independent Native American team for the 1996 International Summer Olympic Games in Atlanta, Georgia. The group, called United Now Indian Olympic Nation, is met recently in Minneapolis to begin work and putting their sports federation together. They've also begun concentrating on sports to be entered and have focused on track and field events, canoeing, kayaking, archery, and some team sports. The union group is taking applications at their headquarters in Bedford, Massachusetts. The family of an Apache elementary school student has decided to sue the Mesquite Independent School District in Texas because, the district says, the boy's hair length was too long. Gregory and Kathy Gomez filed suit late February, charging that the school district was violating the family's rights of religious freedom under the U.S. and Texas constitutions. The 6-year-old boy wears his hair in a single braid as his father does, and the family says cutting the hair would be a rejection of their cultural and religious beliefs. The local school board had granted one waiver for the young Gomez, but later reversed the order to protect their dress code from questions from other students. The Mashantucket Pequot Tribe of Connecticut has launched a new series of ventures after their tribal gambling enterprises have given them the budgets to work with. Among the plans is a global entertainment company. The company has plans for booking first-rate internationally known entertainers, but will also serve as a circuit for Native American entertainers, performers, and athletes. Among ideas are a cable television network, professional boxing, and management for natives in the entertainment fields. Native performers already signed include singer Joanne Shenandoah and the rock band Redbone. And finally, tribally owned and operated radio stations have been changing the speed in which Native people get news and information about their concerns and culture, but the numbers of trained Native people at those stations has not kept pace with the demand. Jacqueline Salee, an Inupiat Eskimo, is director of the Indigenous Broadcast Center in Anchorage, Alaska. She says they've been working to meet those needs in a comprehensive fashion with training. The center is a project funded through the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and Solis says it's aiming to have natives assume more control at tribal stations and share the news they report on a broader basis. The Indigenous Broadcast Center is now preparing for an upcoming Alaska Native Youth Media Conference set for June 23rd in Anchorage. For National Native News and Heartbeat Alaska, I'm Gary Fife.
Uniquely Alaskan, the Tundra Times brings you the best award-winning weekly state-wide coverage. News and opinions. The Tundra Times takes on the issues from an Alaskan point of view. Published by Alaskans. If you make Alaska your home, you should be reading the Tundra Times. Receive 52 weeks of the Tundra Times for $20. Call now. Start reading in-depth Alaska reporting at its best. The Tundra Times, 274-2512. Call today. The Tundra Times.
The Shavings family will be joining us right after these news briefs, beginning first in Chenega Bay, where the villagers there held a fundraiser for the American Heart Association. They raised over $1,800, not bad for a village of just 80 people. The villagers raised the money through jump roping for the American Heart Association. There are about 80 people living in the village of Chenega Bay. The grade school students jumped rope for the Heart Association as well as the high school students. They have a total enrollment of 24 students in their community, kindergarten through 12th grade. Of those 24 students, 18 participated and collected pledges for the jump. Over half the community gathered in the gym to watch the students.
The winner of our trophy today, Myra Elshansky, with $308.
The top pledge solicitor was Myra Elishonsky, a second grader who raised $308. Congratulations, Myra. Congratulations to the community of Chenega Bay for their efforts in raising money for the American Heart Association. And I'd like to thank Tracy Caves for sending me the video on this event. I want to encourage you to please send video from your community. I'll do my best to get it on the air. If you sent me a tape and have not received it back, call me. I'll do my best to get it back to you. We travel now to Akiachak, where Rhonda McBride from KYUK in Bethel tells us about the 3rd Annual Education Conference.
Organizers of the Education Conference say their mission was to let parents know that students must be able to step back and forth between two worlds. Throughout the day, parents had a chance to see how the Yupik culture is incorporated into the curriculum. In one class, students demonstrated how to cut up a seal. Other children showed off their handiwork. As one parent put it, the children need hands-on experience with traditional activities at an early age so they can appreciate it when they grow up and feel proud about their heritage. Parents were also shown how students are using high-tech to preserve their culture. Many of the students are using computers to publish stories about traditional life. And parents were invited to try their hand at using technology. The welding exhibit really got the fathers fired up. In Bethel, I'm Rhonda McBride.
Over 300 people attended the conference from 5 different villages. CNN was there, the International News Network. They aired their story nationally last week. We go now to visit with the Shavings family as they share some of their very special music.
During the Roman era, 28 was considered old.
In the 1800s, 60 was over the hill.
You got it! You gotta taste it all! Oh, the taste of Diet Coke. You gotta taste it all! Yeah, the taste of Diet Coke.
Jacob,
Ruby,
Joseph,
the names are many.
Walter,
People from the bush,
Buddy,
people from the cities,
Alex,
Eskimos,
Susan,
Aleuts, Indians.
George,
They're all our people.
Peter,
Deaths from alcoholism must stop,
Herman,
and there is help.
Julie,
It's at the Alaska Native
Moses,
Alcoholism Recovery Center.
Daniel,
Call Anarch now
Alice,
for yourself,
Tommy,
for a friend,
Carl,
or for a family member.
Mike,
Honor our
Jane,
dead,
Jack,
but celebrate life.
Sergey,
Call Anarch.
Sam, Rachel. Shavings family, and we watch Heartbeat Alaska.
Today we're talking with Laura Ivanoff, who's currently residing in Unalakleet. Laura is real special to me. We had the opportunity to work together when I was living in Nome and working for Norton Sound Health Corporation. You've had personal experience with having an FAS child. What is it like?
My own personal experience. 9 years ago, I gave birth to a child, a baby boy, who they diagnosed as fetal alcohol syndrome. And because of that, it gave me enough, you know, I think most of all it was the hurt that let me strive through and work with children and to prevent fetal alcohol syndrome from happening to the, to the women that are expecting.
Mm-hmm. For our listening audience, what are some of the things that you can share with women who are either wanting to get pregnant or pregnant and are drinking?
The main important thing is patience. To be working with a expected mother who has a problem with drinking and is also expecting. And later on, she will break through and say, yes, I do have the problem, and I will have to stop drinking on account of my baby.
What are the main feelings that a mother goes through that has a child with FAS?
I tell her the three main feelings that a mother that will have that had bared a child, that gave birth to a child that is affected by alcohol. The three feelings are feelings of anger, hurt, and guilt. The hurt is mostly there, and the mother will carry it for the rest of her life. But the mother that is able to change those three feelings into something positive. So that's how it works.
If a woman or a father or a family is anxious about fetal alcohol syndrome and pregnancy, what should they do?
The message that I'm giving to the women is reach out to your husband, your boyfriends, the families, to the healthcare workers, and be positive and reach out and get help. I know it is real hard for women to reach out when they're expecting and they know they have the problem with alcohol. They have to reach out.
Thank you, Laura. We've been talking with Laura Ivanoff, who is the mother of an FAS child and worked for Norton Sound Health Corporation in Nome as an alcohol counselor. For Heartbeat Alaska and Alaska Native Health Board, I'm Ann Walker.
Thank you, Ann, and thank you, Laura Ivanoff, for sharing your personal experience with fetal alcohol syndrome. It took a lot of courage, and I'm sure many people will be enlightened because of it. Thank you very much. We move on now to Savagery and the American Indian. We aired a segment of this on the last program of Heartbeat Alaska, backed by popular demand. We've been asked to air another short segment. Stay tuned now as we look at Savagery and the American Indian, produced by the British Broadcasting Corporation.
American Indians have been trapped by white misconceptions since the time of Columbus himself. Europeans of the late 15th century did not know what to make of the New World. Since the people they found there were neither Christian nor Muslim, they classified them as primitives who had somehow been left behind by history. Right from the start, there was a contradiction in this idea, rooted in the conflicting traditions of Christianity and ancient Greece, and reflected in the pictures of early explorers. On the one hand, Indians were thought of as wild, heathen, and dangerous, closer to the animals than Europeans were. On the other, they were romanticized as gentle, childlike people living in a golden age. Common to both these views was the idea that Indians had almost no culture. It was an idea which survived despite overwhelming evidence that pre-Columbian America was enormously rich culturally and contained some of the most sophisticated and densely populated civilizations ever known. Early European explorers found societies ranging from small hunting bands to great cities more than 10 times larger than medieval London. Indian agriculture was so advanced that it contributed more than half the crop varieties used in the world today. American Indians are descended from bands of nomadic hunters who crossed a land bridge between Siberia and Alaska during the last ice age more than 10,000 years ago. Over many generations, they spread out to cover the entire Western Hemisphere, gradually adapting to the different environments they encountered. By the time of Columbus, they had branched into a mass of distinct and widely differing peoples. What all Indian societies seem to have had in common was a deeply religious attitude to their world. Although they had many different beliefs, most Indians felt themselves to be spiritually connected to the land. They believed that human beings were intimately related not only to other animals, but to rocks, trees, and the forces of nature. Their sense of who they were came from the feeling that they belonged to a particular landscape where their ancestors had lived and were buried.
They treated every living thing with a due respect because they were all bound together in creation as coming from one creator. And they knew that they could not do one without the other. Everything was important. They also had no conception of personal ownership of property other than movable things, things that you could pick up and fashion out of natural materials and carry around with you or use for your livelihood. Land itself wasn't a possession that could be carved up and divided amongst individuals or families, yet use rights to territories were respected.
The Indian belief that land was a gift from the Creator and not a possession was to lead to many misunderstandings with Europeans. To most Indians, the idea of fighting to gain territory was alien. Indians usually fought to win honor and to restore balances between communities. It was unusual for women and children to be killed in battle. More often they would be captured and adopted into the victor's tribe to increase its population and ensure its survival. When Columbus reached the New World in 1492, he thought he had discovered an undeveloped and inferior culture. In fact, he had established contact between two great civilizations, two old worlds. For Europeans, this meeting was to lead to unimaginable wealth and global power. For Indians, it was the start of the invasion of their land and the destruction of their world. In the early 1600s, little more than a century after Columbus's voyage, an intense European competition had developed to explore and exploit North America. The first permanent English colony at Jamestown, Virginia, in 1603 was quickly followed by a French settlement in Port Royal, Nova Scotia, and a Dutch trading post on Manhattan Island, which soon expanded onto the mainland. Shortly afterwards, the arrival of the Pilgrim Fathers in Plymouth, Massachusetts in 1620 gave the English a second bridgehead.
In April, I will be interviewing Mr. James Wilson and Mr. Ken Kirby from British Broadcasting Corporation regarding the making of Savagery and the American Indian and their upcoming projects. On that note, we move on now to Dr. Dennis Greene, who gives us some advice on dealing with prejudice.
We might think here in Alaska that we would be more tolerant of one another, tend to be less judgmental, and less prejudiced to people that are different from us, those that we don't understand necessarily. But that's not always true. In fact, sometimes we tend to react in very predictable ways to those people that we really don't understand or have much knowledge of. And that's really a shame because it causes our own reaction to be fixed to these very same people. It might be really an advantage to simply react to someone's behavior, recognizing that the behavior is no indication of who that person may really be. If the way we feel, the way we think, and the way we act is not likely to influence anyone else, but it is very likely to cause us to feel upset, then we must admit that we're upsetting ourselves, and that's just plain foolish. Maybe we should ask ourselves this: why should it be so important that someone else see the world exactly the way we do? And why would we voluntarily want to give up control over our own lives? For Heartbeat, this is Dr. Dennis Greene.
Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Jeannie Greene, bringing you Native news across the North. I leave you now with the Shavings family. Join me again next week, won't you, for Heartbeat Alaska. See you then.